Hi, it's Myra. Today is Friday, February 9th, 2018, and this morning I had a thyroid nodule biopsy. 2 days ago, I went to an endocrinologist for the first time. I was recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's back in September 2017, but I had waited 4 months to get into this really great endocrinologist in my area, so I finally got to go see him. And he felt that there were nodules on my throat right away, and so he was able to perform an ultrasound on Wednesday during my first appointment, which was great, so I didn't have to come back. And he said that one of the nodules looked alarming or concerning to him, and that he recommended that I get a biopsy for it. So, of course, I was like, well, what exactly does that entail? I mean, I've heard about, like, other cancer biopsies, especially, like, breast cancer biopsies and things like that. Pretty much the same. I watched several videos on YouTube like this one. So, what they do is they run the sonogram on your neck, and they can see the biopsy really clear. In fact, he let me take a picture of the sonogram picture of my nodule, and I can try to post it in the comments so you can see it. But my huge nodule sitting right there. It's kind of to the right on my thyroid and on my trachea, and it actually is pretty good size. So they get the sonogram and then they numb it with lidocaine. So it's pretty funny because I have a friend, Kathleen, who also has nodules on her thyroid and gets them checked all the time, and she's allergic to lidocaine. So she just does it like without any numbing, and I'm like, maybe I can be brave like that. So I tell the doctor that, I have a friend that does it without lidocaine, and he goes, oh, so do you want to do it without it? Because actually the lidocaine shot is the worst part of the whole thing. And I was like, well, maybe not this first time. So I lost all my mojo. Anyway, maybe next time. So they squirted my whole neck with like freezing cold water, which I guess is a way to like lessen the craziness of the lidocaine, because when they shoot it in, you feel it like whoosh through your whole neck, and it's burning. And I guess the ice cold water, like, anyway, I'm just like, okay, that is uncomfortable. But I'm kind of glad I did it, because then he's like, at first he said, probably 2 to 4 needles to go into that one. They were just doing biopsy on that one nodule, and remove tissue, and then that tissue gets sent off. So they start with this itty bitty, the smallest needle you can imagine. So it really shouldn't hurt, and I could just barely feel it going in. And he's watching it on the ultrasound. He can see the needle coming in. He can see that he's in the nodule and withdrawing tissue. So he pulls it out. And the nurse says, I don't think you got any tissue. And he goes, I know, it doesn't look like there's any in this. So he so he's like, oh, Maya, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go to a bigger needle because that's not good. And I'm like, great. So there goes needle 2. Okay, fast forward, needle 3, needle 4, needle 5. And he's like, I'm sorry, this is so unusual. I'm not getting any tissue. And I said, well, maybe the nodule's just empty. And so he's like, I'm going to do one more, because I would hate for you to have to come back in like a few weeks and do this over. And I'm like, exactly, do one more. I don't want to do this again. It's uncomfortable, and it's definitely painful, but it's not like cry painful. I had my eyes closed. And you can't swallow. So the first 2, I was concentrating on not swallowing, because I just feel like, oh no, if I swallow, I'll mess it up, and I might get the needle to stab me somewhere else. And then I realized I was like holding my breath. So then I'm like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to breathe. And so I'm like, start breathing. So then on like needle 3, I'm like, okay, just breathe. You're not going to swallow. So it went fairly quick, but I would say 10 minutes. He did needle 6, and he said the same thing. Although then she shoots it into this little like liquid, and I opened my eyes, and he was like, he and the nurse were like, maybe we see a little bit of color in there, which I guess the tissue's brownish red, so they would see it mixed with this like clear material. So I'm like, oh, please, dear Jesus. I was praying like the whole time. I'm like, Jesus, give them the cells so they don't have to stab me again with another needle. And I'm sure you've seen they go like in and out. They put the needle in, they go in and out. So you can see I have just I know my shadow, barely a little bruise, but it is so sore. Of course, the lidocaine wears off, and then you can feel everything. It was already on my trachea, and now I realize that when I'm swallowing, I can feel it. I can feel that nodule. So now it's painful just because it's sore. And I hope that the bruise doesn't get worse, but that's my little bruise. And I did wear a Band-Aid for a little while because one of the pinpricks was bleeding a little bit. But I'm fine. I feel a little tired. And of course, it's an emotional, exhausting thing to go through. But I survived. It's fine. I know so many women that do this every 6 months. They just monitor, is what they call it. They just monitor all those nodules and make sure they're not growing or spreading or wrapping themselves like embedding into the other tissue. So they don't want to see that nodule like embed into my trachea or the thyroid. That's not good. Anyway, that was my experience. I survived, not a big deal. By the way, I drove myself there, drove myself home. I work from home, so I was able to go back to work. I did take a nap over lunch, but that's mainly because of my Hashimoto's, not because of this biopsy. So it's totally doable. And if you want to be Superwoman, which I was not today, you can do it without the lidocaine, which was the worst part. Thanks.